You fire me for talking about unionizing? I'll spill all your dirty secrets. I used to work for a plasma collection center back from 2008 to 2010. Even though I was a certified phlebotomist, I was placed up in reception, and I slowly worked my way up to senior receptionist and trainer. I was also training for quality control and was known for keeping detailed notes of issues that were in need of fixing/training, which I would forward on to management. Some of the things I'd keep track of were violations of FDA and GHA, German health authorities, since we were run by a German/Swiss company, as well as OSHA issues. Because I wasn't seeing anything being done, I eventually stopped reporting the issues to avoid being labeled a troublemaker, and just kept time and date info, and if I could, I got pictures with date stamps just to cover my own butt in case something went down. Fast forward to June of 2010, and I was talking with one of my coworkers about the proposed cuts to benefits and the high turnover rate at our center. They were complaining to me about being afraid to call in sick because others had been fired for it. And I mentioned that they were putting donors in danger by us being sick, since we weren't allowed to wear face masks unless we were in the back, in the donor area. And even then, it was the clear face shields to prevent getting hit if someone leaked on us. Without thinking about it, I talked about how unions protected against this sort of thing in other medical fields, and how that might be something we should consider to help protect us. The coworker got weirdly quiet, but I figured it was because I was talking about a subject most people don't like talking about. Nothing really happened until about August, when another coworker grabbed my ponytail while I was working with a donor and yanked down on it, jerking my head back. I'd informed everyone I worked with to never touch my hair because it was a trauma trigger for me from being abused. And so this coworker knew I would wind up in panic mode from this. She'd seen it happen before when a donor touched my hair, so this was deliberate. I remember telling her not to do that again or I would make her get away. She, of course, walked up and yanked my hair even harder. And I hit her. The supervisors went into damage control mode as I fled the area, still in a panic response. And one of them cornered me and demanded I write down what happened because I had assaulted someone on the property. I wrote my side, as well as told them to check security footage since the camera was aimed right at the booth I was working at and had a clear view of the events. Turned out, everyone else told an entirely different and creepily similar story than what I told. And the footage couldn't be found even though less than a half hour had passed. I was fired for assault less than an hour later and escorted off the premises after being given 5 minutes to clear out my locker and get my belongings. So on to the revenge, which was two-pronged. My partner was there on that day and saw what happened, and tried to offer to write up what he saw, but was denied. So the next time he went in, he wound up being screened by the other coworker who yanked my hair, who didn't even get a write-up for assaulting me, and asked her loudly enough that the whole reception area could hear. "So, how's those 50 shekels of silver, Judas? Was it worth it?" Which left her in tears, and another person had to finish screening him. He wound up being banned for 6 months for his attitude, but he claimed it was more than worth it. While this was going on, I had been reaching out to the various organizations and departments that oversaw plasma donation and collection, the FDA, OSHA, CDC, GHA, and the like. I informed them of the fact that we always cleaned prior to an inspection, but we didn't keep things that clean day to day, and suggested a surprise inspection should be in order. I'd also handed over copies of everything I'd collected and tried to report, but always got shut down. I learned a few months later that all the management and several of the other techs and supervisors were all suddenly reassigned, and the FDA, GHA, and OSHA had all slammed fines on the center for violations dating back almost the whole time I worked there. You won't pay rent? Good luck finding a new apartment. So this happened to me about 10 years ago in a big city on the West Coast. Hopefully this counts as ProRevenge. I had just finished grad school and I was looking for a way to cut down on rent in an already expensive rental market. Now, mind you, I was young, desperate, and inexperienced with roommates at the time, and this was a huge life lesson for me, and hopefully for my roommate too. I placed an ad for a roommate on Craigslist, which in hindsight wasn't a smart move. Enter Bad Roommate. Bad Roommate was a few years older than me, and at first seemed really cool, with a stable job as a licensed masseuse. After interviewing her, hitting it off really well, and getting to know each other for about a month, we rented a loft in downtown around October with the agreement that rent and utilities would be split. Around the time our first rent was due in November, Bad Roommate said that her work had been slow and she would pay rent in the next 2 weeks. Luckily, I had enough in savings, so I covered rent. Well, the 2 weeks came and went, and still no rent. When I asked her about the rent, she yelled obscenities and accused me of being abusive and harassing her. No kidding. While claiming that she didn't have money for rent, she would be out of the house from around 9 a.m. until around 2 a.m. visiting friends. All of this nonsense continued on, as well as other things, such as stealing my food and breaking some of my belongings, including a bottle of wine that my recently deceased sister had gifted to me. Bad Roommate's excuse was bad energy in the house, while giving me a little smirk. Fast forward to the beginning of December, and you guessed it, still no rent. This time, in addition to yelling obscenities, accusing me of being abusive, and breaking my stuff, Bad Roommate called the police on me, accusing me of making threats. The cops did not do anything, as there was no evidence I did anything. For the record, I didn't. But they did give me a lecture about making threats, and said next time they come out, I could be arrested or forced to leave the residence. By this time, I was almost out of savings and was fearing eviction. Bad Roommate had not paid rent since move-in. The final straw came when I came home from work to find her threatening my 2 cats who were cowering in the corner. I almost lost it. But due to what happened before with the police, I didn't want to poke the fire. This is when I remembered the officer saying I could be forced to leave the residence, and a light bulb went off in my head. Now, the revenge part. I called my best friend, whose father was an attorney. After a phone consultation with him, he told me to pay up the rent and utilities through December, and then simply surrender my key, garage remote, etc., with a signed note saying that I surrender possession of the property with a specified date. I snapped a photo of this note and left it with the secretary in the management office. I then proceeded to sign a new lease with the last of my savings. 1 week before Christmas, while Bad Roommate was out visiting friends, I packed up all of my belongings and left the house pretty much empty, except for the little bit of belongings she had, a little bit of food, and her bed. After about 2 days of angry voicemails, text, and missed calls from Bad Roommate telling me what a horrible and responsible person I was to do this, boom, dead silence until April. In April, I was served with a summons for a breach of contract for abandoning the lease by the landlord. I contacted the attorney, aka my best friend's dad, and filed a response to the court with a hearing date set in late May. I showed up to the hearing with my friend's dad and his 2, I'm guessing they were assistants. Bad Roommate was also there looking smug. I think wine bottle incident smirk. Next thing I know, the other attorney announces that they're dismissing me from the lawsuit since I surrendered possession of the property, but they were not dismissing it against Bad Roommate. Bad Roommate's face went gaunt, the smirk disappeared, and it was priceless. After some back and forth, with her almost getting held in contempt of court for outburst, the judge ruled against Bad Roommate with full judgment awarded to the landlord. The first cherry on top? Best friend's dad represented me pro bono. The final cherry on top? I came to find out a month later via an angry voicemail from Bad Roommate that after being kicked out of a friend's house while couch surfing, her credit was trashed. She had an eviction on her record and subsequently couldn't get another apartment. And that again, I was a horrible, irresponsible person. I never heard from her again afterwards, but she was on the news a few months later, mugshot and all, for trashing a convenience store. Last I heard, she moved to Vegas. In the end, my credit did take a small hit. Even though the suit was dismissed, the debt was put into collections and reported to the credit bureau. For the next 4 years, I tried unsuccessfully to have it removed. At the 4-year anniversary of the lawsuit, I petitioned the credit bureau under the advice of my friend's dad to clear my record, as the statute for filing suit had expired at the 4-year mark. Failure to comply with the request would result in a lawsuit against the credit bureau for slander of credit. To be honest, I just followed his instructions not knowing what I was even talking about. A couple of days later, I received a call that my record had been cleared. Long story, but in the end, it was worth it to get back at an otherwise horrible person. Alright guys, thanks so much for watching today's r/ProRevenge video. As always, hit that thumbs up if you enjoyed the video, and leave me a comment about what your favorite story was. And if you're new to my channel, hit that subscribe button and bell to be notified of future videos just like this one. And I'll see you guys in the next video.